Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB Pro men's open bodybuilder. Today's guest is Brent Swansen. Brent, welcome back to the podcast, my man.
Well, thanks for having me back. We had a good time on round one, so round two should be even better.
For sure. So all of you who are tuning in to this episode with Brent, I just kind of want to let you know this is our second episode, our second conversation. So again, just like with some of my previous guests that I've had on multiple times, if you want to hear more about their story and kind of the typical Behind the Muscle podcast, you can kind of just go back into previous episodes, find that conversation with Brent. It was great. But today we're going to talk about Brent's prep for the Indy Pro. We're going to kind of just keep the conversation light and fun and kind of dig into what this last year has brought in terms of Brent, his prep life. So again, if you guys are tuning into the first time, go back, find Brent's previous episode, and you can catch his kind of normal, typical Behind the Muscle podcast episode. So Brent, thank you again for coming on for the second time, man. I kind of want to pick up things. We were on together round one last fall sometime. So why don't you just talk about what kind of the last 6 to 8 months has kind of been like for you, and what was kind of the determination for you to pick the Indy Pro?
Well, honestly, I've had a lot of setbacks health-wise. And every time somebody says health-wise, like get scared, like, oh, is he dying? No, I don't think I'm dying. But as a lot of you know who know me, I've been a type 1 diabetic since I've been 4 years old. When I turned pro at nationals in 2020, the whole goal was to always take 2021 off to make necessary improvements, because I don't want to step on a pro stage and just get demolished. I want to be halfway competitive and like look like I belong up there. And, you know, me and my coach, Chad Nichols, have some pretty realistic goals that we're going out and, you know, trying to do. But anyways, last year was very hard because in May of last year, I had a retinal tear in my eye and I was completely blind in my left eye. I have had 4 major surgeries. Each surgery was about 6 or 7 hours long. It was very extensive. It forced me out of the gym. And it was really the first time I had been out of the gym for, you know, since I was 14 years old. I'm always somebody who I train every day. I listen to my body. If I feel like I need a day off, I'll take a day off, you know. And I actually was blind all the way up until the end of November of this year. So I was pretty much operating with one eye. I could still drive, but, you know, it kind of puts things into perspective. You kind of question things like, you know, maybe even, am I even going to be able to compete again? You know, a lot of people with retinal tears have to like lay on their stomach for like 23 out of 24 hours after surgery for about 40 to 45 days. So the eye can set. I was lucky enough to where my tore up high. So I actually had to sit in an upright chair and be upright the whole day. So like when I slept, like I had to literally sleep like this with pillows on each side, which made it pretty difficult. So, you know, God has a plan for our lives. And, you know, I started to doubt, you know, if I was ever going to be able to do this again. You know, I think a lot of bodybuilders like me, I'm going to be 30 years old, who have done this. You know, I've been training since I've been 14 years old. I've been competing since I've been 20. Like, no matter if we want to admit it or not, like we do find our identity in this, and this is what we love to do. And when you literally give everything you got to something, I mean, and it can be pulled away in a second, it just kind of makes you reevaluate things a little bit.
So I want to let's dig a little bit deeper into this, Brent, if you don't mind, because this is real. This is real life, right? And we all have our ups and our downs, and there's different things that happen whether we want it to or not. So talking about kind of just like reevaluating things, and during that time when you were kind of maybe questioning if you were going to be able to compete again, and you were reevaluating, you were just kind of like working through some thoughts. I mean, what was that process like, and what were some of those thoughts that you had, and how did you kind of overcome or work through maybe some of those darker days, if you don't mind touching on that?
Obviously having a great support system. I'm very blessed. I mean, I have an awesome wife. We've been together since I've been 20 years old. My parents are amazing. I mean, I have a very good support system. Without having a good support system, when I was pretty much couldn't do anything, there was 40 days to where I couldn't even like take the trash outside because there was too much. I couldn't put any strain on my eye. So they really kind of helped pick me up and kind of helped motivated me. And like everybody has, their own belief system. I'm not here to tell anybody you should believe in this or that. I mean, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. My faith really helped me get through all this during this tough time, and I just kept believing that, if this was the end of my bodybuilding side, there's more to come. There's more for me in life. And whenever that day is, these could be my last shows. If I compete another few years, whenever that day is, I just have faith that as long as I just keep moving forward, that things will turn out okay for me. You know what I mean? So I think you have to have that kind of faith, whether you're a Christian or not. You have to keep moving forward. I think in life you just keep moving forward and putting one foot in front of the other, and you keep on adding, good days after good days, things will start to change.
Absolutely. I love that, man. So let's talk a little bit about your decision then to compete in the Indy Pro. Kind of when was the point where you were like, okay, I'm gonna be able to compete again, and this is the show that I'm going to do? Like, what was the decision? What was the why behind the Indy Pro?
Well, the number one why, there's a lot of whys, but the number one why is that I have, I don't even know how many times nationally been in the top 5, but on all the national shows are either in Vegas, they're in California, they're in Florida. A lot of your friends and your family, unless they're super committed to the process, aren't going to take off the work and fly down there to watch you. So, being from Decatur, Illinois, Indy's about a little over 2-hour drive for us. It's in our own backyard. We can drive there. I've got a lot of friends and family coming to this thing, so they might get a little rowdy when I get up there, yelling and screaming, but that's what makes bodybuilding fun, So number one is the proximity to where everything is. Number two is, just being completely honest, I don't want to have my pro debut be at something like the Tampa Pro, where it's a tier 1 show. I mean, I think that's pretty stupid. I want to go into a show knowing that I belong up there. And, I'm not going to say I'm going to win or even get first call outs, but I just want to feel like I do a show where, I can put myself in a good position to do well. You know what I mean? And, honestly, the time off the gym did my body good because in a year, I might take a handful of days off because I just love the gym. I love to train, and, taking, how many days did I take off? I mean, I would do like some light band stuff, but I couldn't strain my eye, right? So like, I don't even think it was really even doing anything. I mean, it was probably a good 45 to 50 days to where I really wasn't doing anything. And honestly, I kept my diet tight. I was eating good foods. Obviously, the calories were lower. And then, honestly, the decision to actually enter the show was in October at the Olympia. My friend Boston Lloyd, I went down there to visit him a few days, and then I went with another friend to the Olympia. And I was just, he's the most honest friend I have. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. I said, do you think I can do this? Like, have I lost? He's like, man, he said, I think you look better than ever. I think you could really do well. So it was just funny because then that next day, I went to the Kissimmee Muscle Gym in Florida. I ran into Dave Bowers, who's the show promoter, and we talked about it a little bit. And right then and there, I said, this is where I want to make my pro debut. It's either now or never. I'm not getting younger. And, back in the old days, you couldn't call yourself a pro until you stepped on a pro stage. So even though you won the card, you couldn't call yourself a pro until you actually got on stage. So I'm an old school individual. So I kind of live by that mantra. So we're going to do the Indy Pro. Then probably 3 weeks later, we're going to do the Toronto Pro and just, see what happens and bring my best package and just let it all hang out there.
Very cool. Love that. So let's, I want to talk about your coach, Chad Nichols. How long have you been working with Chad, Brent? And what was kind of that initial decision of why you chose him as a coach? And just maybe touch on, maybe what he has brought to you as, as an individual, as a human being, but maybe obviously in this context, a little bit more importantly, what he's kind of changed or brought to you as a bodybuilder. So why did you choose Chad? How long have you been working with him? And how has he maybe changed your perspective or changed some things for you as a bodybuilder, as a human being?
So I initially, well, let's back this up. So Chad's from my hometown of Decatur, Illinois. I've known Chad since I've been a little kid. I can remember literally when Kim Shavesky, his wife, was in her heyday. I can literally remember being like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old and walking to the grocery store and just seeing her in like the old, what were the old baggy sweats called back in the day? I forget what they're called. But anyway, like, and literally just being in amazement, like, that's like the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I want to look like these guys. You know what I mean? So at a very young age, like, I was very impressionable by bodybuilders and bodybuilding magazines and all that. Well, fast forward years later, I did a few of their shows locally, won their shows. They had knew about us because my wife is, pretty good competitor, and we just became friends. He actually started coaching my wife. And then, I felt like after the last nationals where I slipped a little bit, I was still in the top 5, but I came in good, but not my best, that I needed to be with somebody who I thought was the best in the business. And, Chad's resume speaks for himself. I mean, he knows how to deal with big guys. I think in contest prep coaches, some guys are better with bikini girls, some guys are better with littler guys, some guys are bigger with big guys. And I'm a big guy, and the way you diet and the way you train, the way you recover is different for a larger individual than, 170-pound classic physique guy, So we worked about a year before I turned pro at nationals, had my best look. We were moving forward. He's like, we knew we wanted to add a little bit more size. Everything was great till May of last year. My whole eye thing happened. We kind of shut her down a little bit, and then we started back up. And he's just like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "I think you're in a really good spot. Let's just see what we can do." And then, we are where we are right now. And I think the biggest thing I've learned from Chad is that I wasn't eating enough, like especially protein. I mean, biggest thing with Chad, anybody who works with him, is that like a lot of times, like in your off season, and in your contest prep, he lowers it a little bit, but I mean, you're eating 14, sometimes 16 ounces of cooked protein at every meal. He likes to push the food. He doesn't like to push the dirty food. Every once in a while on the weekends, he'll say, "Okay, well, you're going to have a cheat day or whatever, during the off season." But it's clean food. It's a lot of protein. It's a lot of red meat. And, it's, in the way he diets people is different too, to where when a lot of people diet people down for a show, it's just like they keep tapering food down, 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 down. We might have a few weeks to where like we're pushing really, really hard. Then we'll have a week where he raises the calories a little bit and then brings them back down. So it's not like a 2 low carb, 1 high split. It's like a few low weeks, a medium week, then come back down and things like that. And I think, as a bigger individual, if you just crash diet, you can become flat. And honestly, doing it this way, my record speaks for itself. At nationals where I turned pro, my conditioning was at its all-time best, and that's just kind of how we dieted me down, and it worked really good. So I figure, I would call him a good friend of mine, as well as a coach, and I don't want to change the recipe now. You know what I mean? I found what works, and I just want to stick with it and keep on keeping on.
100%. So let's talk a little bit about training. Has your training after your eye surgery and you had that time off, and now that you've kind of come back, you're in full swing prep, you're just a few short weeks out from the Indy Pro. Has your training changed, or have you made any adjustments after your surgery coming back, or is it kind of business as usual? And what does your training kind of look like during this prep?
Well, and this has been years in the making. I mean, I think when you have to look at your body and assess your body and see what your strengths and weaknesses are, right? And you have to keep your strength strong. But like, let's say if somebody has a really, really wide back, but they have no legs. You know, you want to keep your back, but you need to grow your legs to make it more symmetrical, right? You don't want to keep training your back and keep getting it bigger and then have your legs be smaller and then it just doesn't flow. So the whole thing with me is I know my strengths and weaknesses. My strengths are is that I'm very large and I get very conditioned and very hard looking. My weaknesses are is that, especially being a type 1 diabetic and on insulin, I have a wider waist, not necessarily like a gut, but like my waist from, you know, east to west is wider. So we had to make my legs, my sweeps bigger, my adductors bigger, my abductors bigger. My back is pretty good, and my chest bigger, just to kind of offset the waist a little bit. And this has been years in the making as far as the training. So, you know, I always hit legs twice a week. I always hit back twice a week, chest twice a week, and just really hammer those muscle groups a little bit more than others, just because I'm trying to create the illusion with what God gave me of more of a V taper. And I think in doing that, along with my size and condition, it'll just make me a better bodybuilder.
Now let's touch on legs, because especially, you know, guys that are taller, there seems to be a little bit of a struggle of leg development. And that seems to be a body part, especially I see more currently. I don't know if people just aren't willing to put in the work to get those legs, but what have you found to be some, movements, kind of, you said you're training legs twice a week. What have you found to be some things to help you with that sweep, but more importantly, just with overall leg size and development, Brent?
Yeah, anything with the sweeps, I mean, closer stance on things are always going to hit more of the sweeps. For me, I mean, I'm not going to say I don't do it, but I don't do it every week. I don't always barbell squat. And the reason why I don't always barbell squat is because it puts a lot of stress on my core. And I tend to, when I reach a certain weight where I feel it really a lot more in my core than focusing on the mind muscle and the leg stimulation. So I would say in 90% individuals, you probably need a squat every quad day. But with me, and I'm trying to watch my shape and my structure, like I can remember when I did powerlifting about 7 or 8 years ago, and I deadlifted and squatted 2 to 3 days a week. My waist had never been bigger. It was the worst thing I ever did for it, right? So it doesn't mean I don't train as intense or as heavy, but there's different things I do. So like a lot of times, like I'll do a front squat, because on a front squat, you can't load as much. It doesn't load the core as much as a back squat. I'll do a safety bar squat because I can stay tighter here, to where when I'm here, you know, my stomach's kind of out, you know, so anything where I can just keep really, really tight. I'll do like the hammer strength power squat, again, because my hands are here, everything's super tight. I can control the movements on, you know, on my quads and the mind muscle connection there. I always hack squat all the time. I always do kind of a little bit more narrower stance. And I always do duck feet as well to hit on a lot of the inner quad and inner thigh. Always leg press. A lot of times during prep too, I sissy squat, and this could be maybe bro science, but I feel like when you do high rep sissy squats, that really brings out a lot of detail in the quads. I always start out leg extensions on my quad days. I don't go super heavy on them. I go for reps and drop sets and things like that. So that's just kind of how I attack quads. Now, when it comes to my second leg day, is all hamstring, all glute, you know, all my posterior chain. So on those, I will do tons of sets of stiff-legged deadlifts all day long. I'll do trap bar deadlifts, and I like trap bar deadlifts as well because I feel like it doesn't put as much strain on my midsection as a conventional deadlift. I'll do a lot of different lunge variations. I'll do leg curls. I'll do glute ham raises. I think glute ham raises a lot of people just want to neglect. And I will say, one thing is a lot of people comment on my glutes all the time, and glutes is a body fat thing. Your body fat has to be low enough to have your glutes. But I notice, and even coaching with people as well, is that you can be lean, but if you don't have enough glute muscle, it's not going to show well. Okay, so I'll do a lot of times what people call girly glute movements, like I'll do kickbacks. I'll do abduction. I'll do adduction. I'll do glute drives. I'll do, like I said, the glute ham raises, things like that, things that are directly impacting my glutes, because, shows are won from the back. And when you turn from the back anymore, especially like on, a pro stage with the best of the best, if you aren't striated in your glutes, you're not going to do well unless you just have crazy shape and crazy structure, which I don't have. So I have to play on the conditioning and just kind of freak factor calling card. So, I have to really make sure that I'm dug out back there. It's not going to go well for me.
Excellent. So I saw on your Instagram that I think like once a week you have a posing session with Kenny Wallick, which if anybody's been in the bodybuilding world for long, they know Kenny Wallick is the best of the best. So is this the first time that you've worked with Kenny in terms of posing, or has this been something you've done in the past?
I have become a good poser because of Kenny. I started working with Kenny in 2015 or 16. And I've worked with him with all of my national shows. He's worked with my wife and all of her shows as well. And, he actually considers us family. We're very close. Like when we go to Florida, he has a condo down there and we'll go visit him. And, Kenny's just a great friend. He does me a favor because he usually doesn't work on Sundays, but every Sunday at 7:30 a.m. Central Time, we meet for a half hour. I tell you what, that guy's a workhorse. The other week, he was in an airport. You know what I mean? He will meet with you, wherever he has to do it. And I don't know how the guy does it. I always worry about him sometimes because one time I might have been at the Olympia or some national show and he didn't look good at all. And he just been like, I've been literally working for 20 straight hours. So we went to get him food because he literally looked like he was about to pass out. But I've never met a guy who works harder, who's more caring and compassionate than him. And, I'm just blessed that I'm as close as I am with him and that he has taken a liking to me and my wife. And he's just a awesome coach, but even a greater individual as far as posing coaches go.
So obviously you must think posing is an important part of being a bodybuilder, being a professional bodybuilder. It seems like there's a lot of lack with posing nowadays, especially in men's open bodybuilding. So from your perspective, why is it important for you to have a posing coach? Why is it important for you to practice your posing and just kind of have that dialed in with the rest of your physique and the rest of the process of being a bodybuilder?
Well, the posing's an art, first and foremost. And I'm not going to say that I'm the best poser in the world because I'm not. But during your mandatories and during pre-judging, I know how to hide my weaknesses as best as possible and show my strengths, right? So there's different ways that I torque my waist. There's different ways that I hit poses, such as my side tricep, that makes me look a lot better than if I were doing it a conventional way. And I think it's important to practice and to have somebody and, to assess you just so you know that you are bringing your best package. You can do all the work in the gym you want, all the dieting you want, but if you get on stage and you don't know how to hit a pose correctly, like you've literally done all those weeks of work for that one moment and just thrown it out the window, So that's why I think that's super important. Now, I'll be completely honest. Once pre-judging is done with, and it comes time for the night show, I do my best, but the pressure's off, right? Because that's where the show's won, is in pre-judging. The night show is just more for the fans. So I just hit my strong poses. I would not consider my posing routines to be bad, but I wouldn't consider them to be great. I would consider me hitting my mandatories and during pre-judging to be great as far as hiding my flaws and things like that. But I think people don't pay, I don't want to say they don't pay as much attention, but maybe they don't take it as seriously because it's not judged other than at the Arnold, right? And there's only so many hours in a day, and it's no excuse, but I work 2-3 jobs, and I'm so focused on the pre-judging tool. Then when it comes to the night show, it's like, okay, like you're still going to go out and put on a good show, but it's not as pressure packed as the pre-judging just because you're not being judged against your other peers. I think some people knock a lot of bodybuilders. I'm somebody, I always, have a lot of facial expression and you can feel the energy when I'm posing. I think that's very important. I think that goes a long way in posing. There's guys who come out on stage during pre-judging, kind of mean mug everybody and just kind of have their head down and saunter out. It's like, dude, you've been blood, sweat, and tears for 4 or 5 months, and you can't get more hyped up for this than what you're showing. And then the judges feel that too. A lot of times when I pose, the judges are like, we really like how you get into it, and like, you show us that you show that you care and that you want it. If you just go out there and just oh ho hum, don't put any effort into it. I mean, people can feel that, the judges can feel that, and like, you want to put your best foot forward. So as far as the night show routines being better, I don't think they're that bad. I will say though, a lot of times they get compared to classic physique, but you have to remember too, when these classic physique guys are going down to the splits and doing all this crazy stuff, these guys weigh like 180 pounds. I'm right now 270 pounds. You are not going to see me doing the splits where I might not get up. So I think the agility factor and things like that, play a role. Just like in fitness, right? You see these fitness girls do all these crazy things, and you don't see figure girls doing that. You know what I mean? You don't see women's physique girls doing a lot of that stuff. So it doesn't make one better than the other. It's just, to me, it's just different. You know what I mean? And for me, I like the freaky open bodybuilders. So I want to see a bunch of most musculars. I want to see the freak factor, whereas classic is more about lines and about, the art, of it, which is all art. But, when they're going down into all these split style poses and everything, not too many open men's bodybuilders can even get into that position to begin with. So I'm not trying to be too hard on anybody, but that's just kind of my 2 cents on the topic.
I don't know if I want to see you try the splits, Brent. We'll stick to the most musculars, okay?
Yeah.
Good
I'll
stuff.
just hype everybody up.
So I want to ask you specifically, kind of getting back into this prep, compared to other preps. How has this prep gone? Have there been any kind of like, hiccups or speed bumps? Why don't you just touch on this prep specifically?
It's gone really well. I mean, we're a little over 12. I started at 16 weeks out, as far as my contest phase, as Chad calls it. So we're 3 weeks and 5 days out from the Indy. I feel like I could be ready in about 12 days, honestly, if we cut water, manipulate some things. So I'm ready now, but that was kind of always the plan, because he likes to feed you into the show. I think with how he quoted this, and I think it's very important as well, is that on the NPC side of things, you can kind of go overboard with conditioning and still be okay. And he wants me to be as conditioned as nationals, which I already am right now. But he said, you've got to come in full, because if you come in flat against some of those big guys, like, you're going to be toast. So the whole goal is to come in as full as a house, tight as a house, and as conditioned. And right now, as of 3 weeks and 5 days out, everything has been great. I mean, I'm struggling, like, during this time in prep, you don't get a lot of sleep because you're not comfortable. You're hungry all the time. But that's par for the course. If I didn't feel this way right now, I'd be questioning, like, am I going to be ready? And I think as a bodybuilder, you'd have highs and lows and things. And I was talking to my friend, and he's actually blind in an eye, and he's a bodybuilder. And I think he could kind of tell that I was kind of struggling a little bit, just mentally, just because I was just dead dog tired. He's just like, just remember, your worst day dieting. No, your worst day dieting is better than your best day being blind. And then it was just kind of like, I just kind of hit something in my mind, like, like, I've been through a lot crazier stuff than being hungry. Yeah, does being hungry suck? Yeah, I mean, it does. I mean, does not having energy right now hardly ever suck? Yeah, it does. But this is what I signed up for, and this is what I love to do. And I know that it's all in life, it's all about delayed gratification, right? So I'm delaying being full and eating what I want, because I know in 3 weeks and 5 days, I want to look like how I want to look on stage, and put myself in the best position possible to do my absolute best, and in doing that. And it's just kind of like a life lesson, is that if you can delay gratification, you can stay disciplined, this is why I love the sport, because it's extreme discipline, right? It's extreme discipline, and it's 24/7, and I love it. It's almost like when you go into a prep, it's like you're in a prison. I told my wife this yesterday. I just said, I don't really have energy to go out and do anything, and that's fine. But it's almost like, if I'm not working out, I just stay at home and chill, just because I really don't have much energy to do anything else, So, but that's what, I mean, that is the sport, because when you get to this level of body fat, it doesn't feel good, but it's all for a purpose, and it's just for a season. And, that's just kind of how I view things.
For sure. Now, this is going to be kind of more for, the listeners and those watching. I kind of want to, if you don't mind, will you talk about just maybe where you're at in terms of like your macronutrients, kind of like what a typical day right now of eating looks like? Cause that's always kind of fun for us to kind of hear that from the pros. So.
Right. And I don't want to give away too much, just because I do pay Chad, and I don't know how he feels about things, but I'll just kind of be vague in saying things. With him, protein's always sky high, right? So my protein's like, 10 to 12 ounces cooked every meal. I'm eating 6 times a day. It's a lot of veggies, carbs pretty much around my workout, and that's it. Fats pretty much from some lean cuts of meat, and that's it. No added fats. So carbs are low, carbs are the lowest. Fats are pretty low too, maybe a little bit higher than carbs. And protein, like I said, is between 10 and 12 ounces cooked at every meal. And I'm eating 6 times a day. Sometimes, like in the off season, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and he'd have me have some meals in the middle of the night. But right now it's just 6 times a day. And, I honestly don't know what I'm going to eat the next week until I send him photos and videos, and then he makes changes and we go from there. But he says we're in a really good spot. So he just sees us at about, 10 to 12 days out, slowly adding the carbs in to slowly fill me out and just be ready come game day. So that's kind of the plan moving forward. And I think it helps having a coach as well. And I'm somebody who's OCD at heart, so I don't like cheat. He even makes fun of me because the first time we worked together, I was asking him about mustard and the sodium at the very end, manipulating. He just started cracking up like, I wish I had more people like you who was worried about sodium and mustard. But so, I mean, I don't cheat. I mean, I'm not saying that I haven't cheated ever in prepping at all. When I was younger, but the thing is, when you do that, you just feel horrible. The food's not even worth it. So in my mind, like, I can't, if I cheat and come off plan, I can't, that's way worse for me mentally than just suffering and doing what I need to do. So, that's the whole plan going in, is just, just do what he says, and just be my best come show day. And hopefully, sorry, I got off track. The whole point of me saying all that was that a lot of times it's good to have a coach, and it's good to actually meet with Kenny too. So I have 2 people who I meet with on a regular basis. When I send them check-ins and things, it keeps you motivated, and it also keeps you accountable, because if you do slip up on your diet or whatever, like, it's going to show and they're going to know. And my whole thing is I respect those 2 individuals very much. So I want to impress them. I know I'm not going to, because I'm not going to impress somebody who's worked with Ronnie Coleman and all these people. I'm not going to impress somebody like Kenny, who's worked with all these top pros and won all these Olympias as well. But in my mind, I respect them. So I want to try to impress them, if that makes any sense.
100%. Where are you at right now in terms of cardio?
45 minutes, 5 days a week, every day. But my leg days, I have stopped trying to do it fasted. There's a lot of science before it and everything, but with my diabetes, my blood sugar has to be at a certain range before I can do cardio, because if not, it's going to lower it too much. And if my blood sugar gets low and I go hypo, then I have to eat carbs. So a lot of times in the mornings, my blood sugar is not high enough to do my 45 minutes of cardio, because then if I do, then I'm going to have to eat carbs and my blood sugar is going to go low. So typically, I will do a post-workout and just knock out the 45 minutes and get it done. I really don't mind cardio. A lot of guys don't like it. I do cardio year round just to keep heart health and to keep lean and things like that. But cardio for me is never an issue. If he even said go an hour or an hour 30, I wouldn't. But, he said 45 minutes right now. So that's where it's at. I think a lot of people who say it whittles away at the legs, just don't have enough leg muscle to begin with. I'm not saying if you did hours of cardio, it couldn't whittle away, but if you're doing under an hour of cardio, like 5-6 days a week, I honestly don't think that's going to eat away at your legs unless you're doing crazy high intensity stuff that's like really burning them up. I go slow. I'm not saying like sloth style. I mean, I'm still like, my heart's still working, but I'm not putting any undue stress on my legs.
Makes a lot of sense. So you brought up that you're type 1 diabetic, and I know we covered this a little bit in our last episode, but will you just kind of touch on that again, just about maybe what are some of the challenges for you as a type 1 diabetic and bodybuilding competing? Because I think this would be good for some of the new listeners, new subscribers to kind of hear this perspective.
Yeah, so I've been a type 1 diabetic since I've been 4 years old. The pros and cons to that are, the cons are that I'll be 36 in June. I will have had the disease for 32 years, which the longer you have that disease, the harder it is on your health. The pros are, though, is that this is my normal. Like, people are like, how do you do it? I'm like, well, I don't really know any different. Like, I don't know what it's like to have a normal functioning pancreas, so it brings a lot of challenges just because I have to watch my blood sugar. I have to always plan when I'm going to work out. If my blood sugar is not at least, and a lot of people are going to scoff at this, but in prep, if it's not at least in the 200s, like, I'm going to tank and I'm going to go hypo. You know what I mean? Before I do, my blood sugar is very controlled. My A1Cs are always in the 6s, which were diabetics perfect. So, other than the time before I work out, my blood sugar is always, 100 to 120. Sometimes I run a little bit higher during prep just because I don't want to take the chance of having a crash and then having to eat more food than I need to eat, but that's just for a short amount of time. But, I always have to be on top of things because it does change, as I'm leaner now, I need and not eating as many carbs, I need way less insulin than I do when I'm in my off season. Another biggest thing is that insulin is very, very anabolic in nature. I would not be the size I am. My parents were not big individuals. I would not be the size I am if I wasn't pumping all this insulin in me, but I need it to live, right? So it's a catch-22 though. So it's really easy for me to build muscle, but then when I get lean and I have to diet, like, talking to most 100% of bodybuilders, I diet on far less food than most. You know what I mean? And also with that, I've developed thyroid disease. And people might think, oh, well, he was probably taking thyroid medication to get ready for shows before he even had it. No, I wasn't. I've been on thyroid meds since I've been 24 years old. My TSH was like 7 or 8. So I'm on, a combination of, T3, T4. I'll have to be on that the rest of my life. So there are things, it's a metabolic disease. So it does mess up with yourself metabolically. You know what I mean? A lot of it doesn't just affect your pancreas, it affects everything metabolically working in your body, in your heart, in your liver, your kidneys, everything else. So doing bodybuilding is a good thing, but it's also, a bad thing too. I just know I can't do this forever. And I know I can't be, 300 pounds forever either. You know what I mean? When I am done competing, I'm going to downsize and everything because I want to try to be as healthy as possible. I think it's very important too, whether you're diabetic or not, which I always do. I get blood work done every 3 months. You got to stay on top of that stuff. I get heart scans done once a year, the whole gambit of things. Because if you got to stay on top of your health, no matter if you're a bodybuilder or Joe Blow, you know what I mean? Because early detection can save your lives on a, myriad of things.
100%. No, for sure. So we're going to wrap it up here in a few minutes, Brent, but you mentioned you're going to be 36 in June. And you said it several times, you're not gonna be able to do this forever, but before your competing time is up, what do you have kind of a goal in mind that you would like to accomplish, or are you just kind of taking it one day at a time?
I want to answer. Let me answer this.
You've got something there. Come on, be candid.
Yeah. It's just hard. Here's the thing. As a bodybuilder, and I've been around, most of my friends are bodybuilders. I've, worked shows. I've been around tons of people. I feel like people fall into two different categories. I feel like people either think they are worse than they are and are narcissistic, which I tend to be, or I feel like people think way, way too highly of themselves and need a good dose of reality check, which I think more fall into that aspect now than the other. So I've really kind of had to change my mindset because the whole time coming in, like, I'll just be completely honest. I want to bring a look that I have a vision in my mind of how I want to look come Indy Pro. Okay. And as long as I am better than I was at Nationals and I achieve the look that I have in my head, no matter how I place, I will be happy. But with that being said, I've joked around with everybody. I just said, well, you can come up and watch me get, second or third call outs, but I kind of have to change my thought process on that, because a lot of people who I respect in the industry just like, dude, you gotta stop thinking that way. You gotta stop thinking that way. And I always thought that way though, even when I was an amateur. Like, I'm just like, man, I suck. Like, but I think in turning me thinking that way, it makes me push harder, because it's just kind of like it kind of what keeps me going, because I don't think too highly of myself. My goal for Indy Pro, I would be super ecstatic. Not saying it's going to happen. So if it doesn't happen, don't say, whatever. But my whole goal in the Indy Pro, if I were to get like into the first call outs, I'd be ecstatic. If I would get second call outs, I'd be ecstatic. So that's, top 10 Indy Pro is my goal. Even if I fall short, I think that's very realistic. With how I'm looking right now, even if I do fall short of that, as long as I'm better than I was at Nationals, and as long as like I show on stage the improvements that I've been working on the last 2 years, and I can visually see that, and I come in like peaked and perfect, and that's all that you have control over anyway. So I mean, I'll be happy with, as long as I look how I want to look, that I have envisioned in my head, I'll be happy. Anything else would be just a cherry on the top. So that's just kind of where my head is on that right now. So to answer your question, I think realistically it could be second call outs, maybe the into first, basing on how people look and who shows up. But even if it's not, let's say I get third call outs and I look how I want to look, like, I'm happy with that as well. Because for me, it's about becoming the best version of myself, and it always has been. I talk to other competitors too, and they're just so focused on winning. And I don't think I've ever been focused on winning, just because obviously everybody wants to win, but that's not the sole reason why I bodybuild, if that makes any sense to you.
Does make sense 100%. And then you said after the Indy Pro, you're going to plan on going to Toronto as well?
Yeah, as long as everything feels good, everything's clicking good, and I feel good. That's 3 weeks later. I've never been to Toronto. For how we typically get ready for shows, New York would be great because it's the next week. But typically, we carb load pretty hard. And I know for me, I have to be razor sharp. And I don't know if I could be razor sharp for New York coming off Indy. So I feel like I needed a few weeks. Like, I wish there was a show like the week after the New York, but there's not. Indy's June 5th, which is like 3 weeks after. Sorry, Toronto's 3 weeks after Indy. So I think that'll be perfect timing. And then after that, we're just going to shut her down and just assess. And then I have a guest posing coming up in December that I'm doing, and just kind of enjoy the summer and enjoy the time off, considering that I'm in school, amongst other things. So that's kind of the plan moving forward.
And then how much longer in terms of years do you see yourself being a competitive bodybuilder, Brent?
That honestly, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard because, like, how do you know when to stop? I've spent my whole life, trying to achieve a goal, and my ultimate goal of turning pro has already been accomplished. So now anything else is a cherry on the top, but I think a lot of people, it's hard to know when to stop, because anybody who is decent at this sport has to invest so much in it, and you sacrifice so much. And it's like, how do you step away from that? And I think that's something that I want to even get more into thinking about and discussing, because I know there's a lot of bodybuilders out there who feel like I do. And, I have a lot of other things that I'm involved with. I have jobs, I financially we're good. So it's not like I have to do this because I'm not making money doing this anyways. I am inadvertently from, some sponsors, some little sponsorships and coaching people a little bit on the side. But it's just hard when you really love to do something, when to know when it's a good time to step away, and you don't want to step away too soon, but you also don't want to step away too late. So that's a good question. And I'll have to think really long and hard after these two shows to, see what's going to happen. And, I wish more people on social media, and I wish more people would talk about, competitors and the afterlife of stopping competing, because I know that's a very hard decision for a lot of people. And I think it's kind of interesting just because not a lot of people have covered that.
Yeah, well, whenever that time comes, first of all, I'd love to have you come on after you're done competing this year. I'd love to have you come back on, and we'll just maybe talk about your thoughts on those shows, if you're cool with that. And then, whenever down the road you decide that, hey, you know what, my competitive days are up, you've got a platform here to come on and kind of share the thought process and share anything you would like about that, because I think you hit the nail right on the head, Brent. Like, we need more people in your position, professional bodybuilders, speaking to professional bodybuilders about that process, because anytime that you've been doing something for so long, whether it's a passion project or it's a career or a relationship, what have you, it's hard to let go. It's hard to give it up because, like you said earlier, there's so much identity wrapped up into it, right?
And whether you want to say so or not, because people are like, oh, well, you'll be okay because, you have a great relationship with your wife and you have a great job. And, like, I had just got done with my master's in administration, so I could go become a principal or vice principal or whatever like that, and yeah, those are all great things. But I don't know in life if I'll ever be as passionate about something as I am bodybuilding, because bodybuilding takes up everything. It takes up all your free time if you want to be good at this stuff. You know what I mean? And you wouldn't do it if you didn't love it. You could ask any pro bodybuilder, take the money away, take it away, everything. They at one time were an amateur doing this for free, spending money on the sport. And, you have to love it to do it, because it is probably the hardest thing possible. It's not like if you're a baseball or basketball player, you put in your work, you go home, you can pretty much eat what you want, you feel good, you go, spend time with family or whatever. No, like, this is especially during prep, it's 24/7 every single day. And to be good at it, you have to do that, because guess what? If you're not, somebody else is willing to do that. And I think in all of that does take up a lot of your passion and a lot of your identity, just because you spend so much time doing it. So, I think there's some other things. I've talked to a lot of my friends who are, involved with the NPC, IFBB and things, and they want me to kind of get maybe involved in the judging side or expediting side. I've helped expedite a few shows. I might get into judging as long as my eye stays good. This eye is 20/20. This eye is actually 20/30. It's not as good as this eye, but it's pretty much, it'll never be normal, but it's good enough to where I can, read and everything good. So I mean, that's just kind of, the thought process, on that. But I think a lot of times for bodybuilders especially, it's hard to walk away, just because it's, you love it and you give so much to it, and you've worked so many years for it as well. It's just hard to know when to kind of, go all in and just, walk away,
Yeah, for sure. Well, and we see it with, the football players and the basketball players. I mean, look at Tom Brady. I mean, I'm retired, he's done. And then a few months later, he's back. And we've seen that with Brett Favre and a slew of those type of athletes as well,
And look at Tom Brady, you know what I mean? He's doing it because he loves it. He's a bazillionaire. He's got family. He's got the wife. He's got everything that any human being could possibly want. But there's still the fire in him to where he still wants to do it, and he's still doing it at a high level. And, he's in his 40s. And you can't tell me that he's not doing it for money. He's doing it because he loves what he's doing. He doesn't need money. I have no idea what he's Google. I have no idea how much he's worth, but I mean, he's worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, So, I think for any athlete at the base of it, it's hard to walk away. It's hard to no one to walk away from something that you love to do.
Yeah. All right, Brent. Well, we've been going for about 45 minutes. You're in the heat of prep, so I won't take any more of your time. I do just again want to thank you for coming on, talking about this prep, talking about a little bit of the life updates. Before I close this out, any shout outs, any sponsors, Instagram, why don't you give us any of that information, any final words, and then I'll close us out.
Yeah, on Instagram, if you just put in Brent Swansen, I think I'm the only one, but it's with the EN, not an ON, so SWANSEN. Muscle Leg is my main sponsor. Just Right Eating is our food sponsor. CJ is our suit sponsor. CJ, Kenny, with my coaching, and same with Chad. Protan, and I think that's it right now. So, I mean, those people have always had our back, and, those are great people to be involved with. We've been involved with Muscle Leg for years. It's just funny how when things happen organically, it's just the best. When in my early 20s, I can remember going to shows and ordering tons of Muscle Leg because I was broke and you could get them, and then for cheaper at shows. So we'd be buying all this stuff, and then the owners were there one time and just started talking to us. And at that time, my wife was doing very well in what she was doing. I was kind of just getting started. For bodybuilders, it takes a little bit longer than for other divisions. And then they just kind of were just like, well, why don't you just become athletes of ours? And then we become really, really good friends over the years, and we've been with them forever. And they are the most loyal, genuine sponsors that anybody could have. So along with having a good product, it's just funny how when things are meant to be and things happen organically, you don't have to push things, how much just easier things are than when you're just out there just trying to, beat your head against the wall. Sometimes the best things in life happen, and they just happen. So
cool. All right, Brent, thank you so much, man, for coming on again.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. All of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, once again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. If it wasn't for you, the podcast wouldn't exist. A couple quick things before we wrap up and close out this conversation with Brent. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. That's very important because I release all these episodes first on YouTube, and then I'll distribute them to the other podcast platforms. And then the second favor I have for all of you, take this episode with Brent, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Brent. Make sure you tag Behind the Muscle so that we know you listened to this episode specifically and found great value in it. If you haven't followed Brent on Instagram yet, make sure you go to Brent's Instagram. It'll be down in the show notes on whatever platform you're listening to this podcast. Click on his Instagram, give him a follow, and just encourage him as he's 3.5 weeks out in terms of his pro debut. So appreciate you. Thank you again, guys, for tuning in. I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.